everyone. This is Donna Armstrong, and I am here today with the soon to be Dr. Doug Heath.
And Miss soon to be Dr. Donna Armstrong.
You're
We're
absolutely
both soon to be
correct.
doctors.
And listen, we wanted to talk to you about America's hidden advantage. We want to talk to you about diversity and just how it is so beneficial and how it is the advantage that America does have.
You know, Donna, one of my favorite quotes is from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when he said, I have a dream that my four children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Are we there today?
We're not there yet, Doug. We made some waves and some strides, but we still have some work to do, you know? And here is the thought behind that is, see, many people can categorize many things like gender and race and religion and ethnicity and language and income and age and sexual orientation. But unfortunately, these categories are sometimes used to label people and to unfairly saddle them in their own stereotypes.
You know, stereotypes often form the basis of prejudice, a premature judgment about a group or member of a group without sufficient knowledge or thought. We developed prejudices toward a whole group based on a single emotional experience with one person. Prejudice demonstrates an unfair bias that does not allow for individual differences, good or bad, and it violates the standard of reason, justice, and tolerance.
Wow, tolerance. That's a word we need to get a hold of.
Yes, we
We
do.
need to practice a little more
A
tolerance
lot
with
more
some
tolerance.
things.
Yes, we do.
Yes, yes, yes. So listen, I'd like to add this back to that. See, many sociologists, Doug, they attribute prejudice to modern social problems.
Um,
Were you aware of that?
I was aware of that. A
Yeah.
lot of those social problems, we look at things such as overcrowding, unemployment,
Mhm.
competition between groups. They result because when the Europeans migrated here,
Mhm.
in order to make sure that they had the needs and things were cared for, we put them in clusters and groups so that we could make sure they were fed and they were housed, and so they made up the great cities of the Northeast.
Mhm.
When we had the great migration of African Americans to the North, looking for more freedom and economic prosperity after slavery, we actually moved them into those same enclaves. And so now what we have is we got a lot of people without the necessary resources for them to live, for them to have a good standard of living.
Yes, and research also suggests that these same people of lower, but not the lowest socioeconomic status, or who have lost status, are more prejudiced because they seek scapegoats to blame for their misfortune.
Actually, that's a comes from the playbook throughout the way throughout history. You know, Hitler blamed the Jews for the plight of the German economy.
Hmm.
And when we Europeans came here to America, we blamed the Indians for eating up all of the food and taking up
Hmm.
all of the land and everything. And then that goes on even to today. You know, for a long time the Irish were persecuted, the Polish were persecuted. And even today, all of us who are now here in second and third generation, we now blame the Mexicans coming over for the plight of our economy. And so it's one of those things that we look for people who are different in order
Hmm.
to blame what we consider our problems and situations that we can't overcome ourselves.
Yeah, it's always someone blaming someone else for what is. But the backlashes against minority groups are therefore more likely during periods of severe economic downturn and increased unemployment. Unemployment is still an issue for us.
It really is. Even in these times of, we've got the lowest unemployment around in history, and
Hmm.
if you look at our economic situation, people are living at higher standards than in recorded history. But many of us look at our own irrational prejudices and work to, and many of us recognize our own irrational prejudices and
Hmm.
work to overcome them. But in contrast, bigots are those who choose to hold on to those prejudices, displaying a degrading attitude toward others whom they feel superior.
Say more about that.
Well, when you look, various groups have been and continue to be victims of bigotry,
Hmm.
including racial groups, ethnic and religious groups, women's, people with disabilities, gays and lesbians. When you take look at America's Pulse, which is a nationwide survey conducted in the early 2000s by the National Conference for Community and Justice, we found that gays and lesbians happen to be the most discriminated against groups today,
Wow.
followed by African Americans.
Mm.
In just 1 month, 42% of African Americans have experienced at least one episode of discrimination. Half.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
12% have suffered such an experiences 2 or more times. When we look at Asians, they are probably the smallest group, even though growing. But 8% of the Asians feel that they have racial experiences that were a result of discrimination, and 31% report suffering unfair treatment individually. 16% of Hispanics and even 13% of whites also report having experienced at least one occurrence of discrimination during the prior month.
Whites, that surprises me. Whites,
You know,
discriminated against.
everyone that shows you that discrimination and bigotry knows no color. It's boundless. It can incorporate anybody. It is irrational, and it's one of those things that anyone can be a victim of bigotry and discrimination.
So bigotry knows no color and has no boundaries.
Knows no color and has no boundaries.
That's something to keep in your mind. So let's continue on here with our thought and what we're doing here today on diversity. I'm really enjoying this conversation with you,
Me
Dr.
too, so
Doug.
am I. Dr.
Yes.
Donna?
Yes. All right. Listen, I know this, that throughout history and continuing to the present, the color of one's skin, along with religious bigotry, has led to severe acts of persecution around the world.
It has. That's right. It continues on today. It continues on today. The Christian persecution and extermination of Jews from the late 4th century in the Roman Empire.
Hmm.
Think about the institution of slavery resulted in the forced migration of an entire race of people, and that practice separated families and labeled the enslaved as property.
Mm.
The Nazi Holocaust, which systematically killed about 6 million Jews, 400,000 gypsies, and an unknown number of Jehovah's Witnesses and others. The Sudan government's cultural current warfare and extermination efforts against Christians and animists.
Hmm.
In Northern Ireland, where Roman Catholics and Protestants still don't get along and they're assassinating thousands of followers of each other's faith. In Tibet, the Chinese government, they are still persecuting Tibetan monks. Bosnia, where Christians committed genocide against Muslims. East Timor, where Muslims committed crimes against humanity against Christians. And the most recent incarnation of slavery is sex trafficking.
Wow, you're absolutely right. Sex trafficking is big right now.
It is. It really is. If you look around our society, you see that our society is very, very diverse, and it enriches our lives, much as biological diversity of an ecosystem increases the stability and productivity. Cultural diversity brings together the resources and talents of many people for the shared benefit of all.
So you're talking about shared power right there.
Shared power, shared benefit. We all reap the fruits of the labors.
That's right. That's right. And you know what? We have to learn how to see people in their strengths.
We have to see people in their strength and
Right.
for their contributions and value their contributions as we value their diversity. You know, and our state of living in Western civilization is a result of the contribution from all affected groups. Without those contributions, we could likely be a third world society.
Mm.
But
Third world society.
think about that. A third world society. We would take away the contributions of any one of those groups we just talked about, based on race, based on gender, whatever. Take away those contributions. They're significant enough that they could render us a third world society.
Wow, that's powerful right there. That's powerful. So sadly, these differences among us have historically formed the basis of fear, bigotry, and even violence, Doug.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Consider how dull life would be if we all looked alike, if we all thought alike, if we all acted alike.
It would be a boring, boring place, wouldn't it?
It would be boring. So by learning to recognize our similarities and appreciate our differences, together we can overcome prejudice and intolerance and work towards a more peaceful and productive world.
That is awesome.
That never.
That is nirvana.
Hmm.
We still have a long way to go because people fear diversity simply because they're accustomed to the way things used to be, and change makes people uncomfortable.
What? Change makes people uncomfortable?
Uncomfortable.
I can't believe you said that.
So it makes people feel threatened because they perceive increased participation by traditionally underrepresented groups is somehow going to affect them in the workplace,
Mm.
politically, and a challenge to their own social status and power.
Wow.
If left unchecked, these fears can lead to resentment and bigotry, and lack of respect is often based on ignorance and misinformation. Can you imagine the first black president? They tried to say he wasn't born in the United States, therefore he was an illegitimate president. How crazy is that?
Miseducation.
Miseducation, misinformation, lack of education.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, listen, this is what I feel. God created the human entity in his own image.
Yes, he
You
did.
know,
Amen.
every man and woman of all time is a valuable creation unto God. And
Yes.
so each person is made in his image, even though this image is marred, the human being is most important to God. Christians should value everyone as a precious jewel.
Speak, doctor.
See, God does not view us as individuals differently because of our external appearances. God knows each person's heart. Our outward appearance does not change his understanding or his standing with us.
Amen.
He knows our hearts. Christians should never prejudge another person on the basis of their external characteristics.
That's right.
We
That's
just
right.
should never do that.
No, but we do so often.
We do.
So here in the United States or in Western civilization, we've all created these. I like to call them false gods or idols. We represent and we put things on pedestals such
Mm.
as money,
Ooh.
power, cars, clothes, you
Mhm.
name it. If you look, one of the reasons some of the more traditional religions disdain Western society is because of those materialistic things that we hold dear and we put up that we appear to idolize.
Mhm.
But if you look at, God is not concerned with the material.
That's
Like you
right.
said, he's concerned with the immaterial.
Yes.
And he wants an intimate relationship with each person, no matter who your God may be, regardless of what your religion is. When you look at people, they're more at peace when they sit down and they meditate. They have
Mhm.
one-on-one time. They have their God time, their
Mhm.
meditation time. They're at more peace. We need to learn how to mimic that
Mhm.
and carry that with us as we go out throughout each day.
Yeah, I know that's one thing. I can't start my day without my God time. So, when we think about God is glorified by the diversity of His
Yes,
creation.
yes.
We should appreciate the beauty of the variation and the kaleidoscope of colors within the creation. God is an impartial judge.
He is. Look at nature. Look at
Mm.
the different wildflowers in Texas in the springtime.
Yeah.
There are
Ooh, I
thousands of
love it.
wildflowers. They're beautiful. Some people call them weeds. They're things of beauty. And that's how we are. We are like the wildflowers of Texas to God. We're all different. We all have our own inner beauty.
Yeah, that's something. Listen, diversity is not always about race or ethnicity. For instance, Jesus certainly expressed diversity in his choice of staff: the tax collector, the fisherman, the physician, the farmer, prosecuting attorney, the woman, caught in adultery. He valued diversity and
A
placed.
kaleidoscope of skills.
Yes, exactly. He valued diversity and placed an array of personalities.
Diversity of thought.
Yes.
Many people don't think about that, but diversity
Right.
of thought is another aspect of diversity that causes problems. And if we're not aware of
Wow.
it and we don't embrace it, it can separate us.
It could definitely separate us. What about diversity in backgrounds?
Same thing, diversity of background, where you come from,
Hmm.
part of the country. There are people that say if you ain't from Texas, you ain't any good. And so, we have all those little colloquialisms that we use, and they may seem funny, but once again, if not taken out of context, they can be a basis of division, and they
Right.
can help break us apart.
Right. So just taking a point just from the Bible, Jesus embraced diversity at all
At all
levels.
levels.
Personally, I think we need to be more like Jesus.
If we're a country that is one country, one nation, under God, whomever God is, that means everybody here is valuable and everybody here should be valued and valuing each other.
This is true. But listen, I mentioned earlier about tolerating diversity.
Yes.
Yeah. So if we were to be more like Jesus, we would move from just tolerating diversity to actually embracing this diversity.
Hence our hidden advantage here in the United States.
That is
America's
it.
hidden advantage.
That's
We need to
right.
embrace it.
We need to embrace it. So listen, remember that America's hidden advantage truly is diversity.
How do
So,
we get that across and where do we start? How can we get that to be more mainstream?
well, one of the ways to do that is to go out and just start meeting people, start talking to people, start listening to people, start caring about people.
All right. I got you ask a question for you all. Do you embrace diversity? Does your job? Does your church? How about it? Think about it. Do something different. Go to a synagogue, go to a mosque, go to a cathedral, do something different.
And connect the dots on the kaleidoscope of things that might be diverse for you. Listen, this is soon to be Dr. Donna and soon to be Dr. Doug. And you think we should do this again?
I think we should do this again. We got more to talk about.
Okay.
How
What do
about
you
some
think?
solutions?
Why don't we talk about some solutions? Solutions to
Diversity, to getting us to become more of a diverse society. How are we going to do that?
well, where does it start? It starts with the solutions begin with our youth. So let's
Let's
start
talk about
there.
that next week.
Next week, we'll be talking about solutions begin with our youth and how diversity begins with you teaching the younger generation.
All right.
All right.
We'll talk to you next time.
Signing off. We'll talk to you next time. Have a good one.